Hello, my name is Kimberly Weitzman. I am the QA and training team lead at BioQuest Psychiatric and Behavioral Solutions, and I will be leading you through the training topic today of safety and emergency response. So we will start off with just some general safety and emergency procedure reminders. First of which is a reminder to remain as calm as possible. Especially if you are with a client and supporting an individual that we serve. Just want to remind you that oftentimes our clients look to us as staff for cues on how to react and how to respond, especially in the case of an emergency. So even more important for us as staff to remain calm for them, as well as to remain calm for our coworkers as well. Want to cover the topic of never being afraid to call 911, especially if you feel as though the safety of the situation is in danger and you do not feel as though you are equipped to keep the scene safe. Please do not hesitate to call 911 for additional assistance. As you are calling 911, just a reminder to please be cooperative with any outside entities, such as cooperating with the 911 operator, being helpful as you can with any sort of paramedics, police, fire department personnel, etc. And then lastly, you may want to actually pause the training right now to ensure that you have the correct contact information for your own supervisor, as well as the on-call supervisors, because you're going to want to notify those individuals to alert them of any unsafe situations. And please follow all directions that they may provide for you in the case of an emergency. Our next topic is just some things to consider to keep the environment in which we work, and oftentimes the environment in which our individuals that we serve live, as safe as possible. There are many factors that contribute to the safety of the environment where we work and the environment in which they live. Just as an example, we want to be sure to keep the batteries charged within things like smoke detectors so that we are aware when there may be fire or potentially smoke in those environments. Failure to inspect your workplace or your office where you work could lead to tripping hazards and just failing to maintain the equipment that you use on a regular basis. Even things like overlooking a overheating laptop could lead to health and safety concerns such as fire. So safety really is everybody's responsibility. So I encourage you to take safety seriously and to also take ownership of the safety of yourself, the safety of your coworkers, and the safety of the people that we serve. Our next topic is about preventing infection as well as preventing communicable diseases. All offices and all locations where BPBS employees work should have signs posted instructing on proper hand washing techniques. And you'll see one there on the screen demonstrating those proper techniques. But just in general, all employees should be washing their hands and utilizing soap every time that they use the restroom. A reminder that hand sanitizer does not replace proper hand washing techniques. However, please use hand sanitizer after you have washed your hands and if you are unable to wash your hands. Also, a reminder to please wear gloves if you feel you are going to be coming into contact with any kind of bodily fluids or blood. And then again, please wash your hands after removing and disposing of any gloves. Okay, we're also going to kind of continue that hygiene discussion and now talk about respiratory hygiene and cough etiquette. This is a way to describe infection prevention measures to decrease the transmission of illnesses. Just want to share some information, some statistics that when an ill person coughs or sneezes, they release droplets of infectious particles into the air. And those particles can sometimes travel up to 26 feet and can linger in the air for up to 10 minutes. So we don't want others to be breathing in those infectious particles. So to prevent that spread of disease, please use a tissue to cover your mouth every time that you cough or sneeze. If tissues are not readily available, the next best thing to do is to cough or sneeze into your elbow and always immediately place any used tissues into a trash can to dispose of them properly. Then please also, again, wash your hands after coughing or sneezing. And other good techniques to use to prevent the spread of diseases is to being sure to wash your hands after touching or shaking hands with people that you believe to have any kind of infectious disease. All right, so moving on to the topic of fire safety. Oftentimes people think of fires as being bright red and there being, large rolling fires as that being the most dangerous type of fire. But in actuality, I want you to think of dangerous fires as being fast, hot, dark, and deadly. And that sometimes the most deadly part of the fire is actually that dark smoke that could be breathed into our lungs. I'm going to give you some other statistics now about fire safety. In less than 30 seconds, a small flame can become out of control and turn into a major fire. Every year, fire claims about 5,000 lives in the United States. From the first appearance of a fire in the home, it can grow and spread with astonishing speed, often only allowing the occupants minutes to escape. Like I said, the smoke and the toxic gases created by the fire is oftentimes what leads to death. So let's take a moment to think about what could be some common hazards around the workplace or around the home where your clients may be living that could be contributing to fire hazards. We want to think about any sort of blocked entries or exits and do our best to keep those clear. So clearing clutter, inspecting the area where you work and where your clients live for any kind of damaged cords, exposed wires, and disposing of those appropriately. And then want to take fire and safety precautions, such as inspecting and ensuring that smoke detectors and alarms are in working order. The same thing with fire extinguishers, know the location of the fire extinguishers, become familiar with how they work, ensure that they have been inspected and are in working order. Become familiar with your escape routes. We'll talk more about escape routes here in a moment. When you are escaping a building, please use the handrails and stay to the right on any staircases to allow fire personnel to enter the building, and never ever use an elevator in the event of a fire. And then lastly, we want to use proper containers when we are disposing of cigarettes. We want to use safe ashtrays, for example, metal trash cans, and do not put paper products in the same container when we are disposing of cigarettes. Continuing on with fire safety, we want to consider also electrical and heating hazards, and here are some good tips to avoid those. There should really only be one plug in each electrical socket. Think of two plugs per outlet. More than that could overload the outlet and then lead to a fire. Please check to make sure that cords and plugs are not damaged or frayed. If you are working in an office that has a kitchen, please unplug small appliances when they are not in use, such as toasters and coffee pots. The use of space heaters is not recommended. However, if it is absolutely necessary, please only use them in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and never place anything on or near a space heater. That could prevent proper ventilation. It could then become too hot, and that could also lead to a fire. As mentioned earlier, please become familiar with evacuation plans or graphic plans, such as you see on the screen here. All ViaQuest locations and offices will have such posted graphic plans that illustrate the layout of each floor. This will indicate the predetermined meeting point outside the office or outside that location in the event of an evacuation. These graphic plans will also indicate the location of smoke detectors as well as all of the outside exits. In the event of an emergency, please follow the graphic plans accordingly. It will identify safe meeting places within the office as well as outside, depending on the type of weather condition, disaster, or the reason for evacuation. So take a moment and get familiar with this in the location where you work. And please notice that there are different locations for different reasons for evacuating. We're going to go to different places for a fire versus for a tornado. Become familiar with that, as well as helping your clients to become familiar with those locations and those procedures as well. We have an acronym to help you remember what to do in the case of a fire, and that acronym is RACE, R-A-C-E, stands for rescue, alarm, contain, and then the E stands for extinguish, and sometimes it stands for evacuate. So having this kind of structured approach to handling fire emergencies can help people to reduce confusion, reduce panic, and do the necessary steps in the correct order to keep people as safe as possible. So the next couple slides will break down each component of the acronym RACE to help you stay safe in a fire emergency. Starting with the first R, which stands for rescue. The primary focus here is the immediate removal and safety of all people that are in the danger zone, the area affected by the fire, as well as the area affected by any kind of smoke. So in this stage, we want to identify and assist those individuals that may need help, especially people who may have mobility issues or impairments. Your role as staff would be to guide people to the nearest, safest exit. Like I said, please avoid the use of elevators during an evacuation, as those may become hazardous. And the best way to become prepared in the case of an emergency is to practice. So please have regular evacuation drills and become familiar with those clear emergency plans to help ensure an efficient rescue process. And there are some additional steps here listed on the screen. So you should be familiar, like I said, with the predetermined emergency meeting places. You as staff would be expected to yell fire to ensure everyone is aware of the emergency, and please support everyone to get out as safely and quickly as possible. The less time that you and others are exposed to those poisonous gases, the heat of the fire, as well as flames, the safer everybody will be, and hopefully the better outcome there will be for everybody. The A in RACE stands for alarm. So after you have completed the R, you've ensured that everyone is safe. The next step is to alert others and activate the building's fire alarm system if it has not already been activated. So you may sometimes have to activate a manual fire alarm if the system is not automatically triggered. You also will be communicating clearly and calmly to anyone that is involved in remedying the situation to avoid panic and confusion. The ways you can support at this point is to ensure that the alarm system is loud and functional throughout the building. And please contact emergency services immediately after activating the alarm. Please cooperate with them by providing detailed information, as much as you know it, about the fire's location and the evacuation status. We have some specific directions for staff who may be at a facility, such as our VDES staff or staff working at a nursing home, to take an additional step of notifying any front desk personnel of the location of the fire so the whole building is aware, and they may then relay that information to any sort of emergency personnel when they arrive. The C in RACE stands for contain. So once the alarm has been activated, people are evacuating. The next step is to contain the fire to hopefully help it from spreading. And there are some techniques you can use to accomplish that, such as closing doors and windows to isolate the fire. There may be fire doors and barriers that can be used to compartmentalize the building to, again, restrict the fire to a smaller area. You may be shutting off ventilation systems to limit the spread of smoke and fire. And maybe having proper doors and windows and ventilation management can also significantly slow the fire spread. So we're wanting to do our best to contain that fire to as small an area as possible. The E, there's actually two E's in RACE. The first one, if possible, we want to extinguish the fire. So if possible, if the fire is small and manageable, the employee may attempt to extinguish the fire using a fire extinguisher. Only should be done after rescuing an alarm and containing have been taken. Please don't take a chance if you are uncomfortable or if you are unsure if you could extinguish the fire or if you're unsure of how to use the fire extinguisher. Do not put yourself in danger trying to figure out how to use a fire extinguisher. If you cannot safely extinguish the fire, we would then go on to evacuate. But if you feel as though you could use a fire extinguisher and the fire is very small, there are some basic directions on how to use a fire extinguisher up here on the screen. And there is another acronym to help you remember how to use a fire extinguisher in a proper way. And that acronym is PASS, P-A-S-S. P stands for pull the pin. A stands for aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. The first S stands for squeeze the handle. And the second S stands for sweep from side to side. So if you can remember PASS, pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep, that should help you in an emergency situation to remember how to use a fire extinguisher. However, if the fire is too large or if you are not comfortable or able to use a fire extinguisher, you may have to go on to the second E, which is to evacuate. Remember, safety comes first. So you may just go past extinguish and go right on to evacuate. There's a note here at the bottom that once you have evacuated, we do not re-enter the building unless we are given the all clear and are allowed to by both BioQuest management as well as personnel from the fire department. Please do not make any attempts to rescue anyone in the location. Those rescue attempts will be made by the fire department personnel only. Okay, so after you have completed the RACE plan, you as staff will contact either the supervisor and or the supervisor on call for further instructions. Please follow all directions provided to you by those supervisors. The management team will then take on the responsibility of contacting clients' care team members. You will need to ensure that you complete an incident report and turn it in by the required deadline. If a fire occurs while you are with a client, please thoroughly document the incident within your progress note, and then you are responsible to also notify the quality assurance director. Okay, so that completes our basic fire and electrical information about how to stay safe if there is a fire situation. We're going to move on now to severe weather, natural disaster, and emergency response. And first, what we're going to go over are the different types of warnings and different types of information that you may be receiving about any kind of serious weather. So a tornado warning is a signal that you will hear that is a steady 3-minute wailing tone, followed by a voice message for 2 minutes. This cycle is repeated until the emergency is over. You'll need to seek shelter immediately for a tornado warning. And as you see up there on the screen, a warning means that a tornado has been sighted and has been detected. On the other hand, a tornado watch indicates that current weather systems are right for a tornado to occur. That it could be possible that a tornado could develop considering the current weather conditions. So when a public warning is occurring, you will hear both the wailing sound and your local firehouse's sirens will be blaring. Please take cover immediately when you hear both of these sirens. You will want to turn on the TV and or the radio to receive real-time updates and emergency information. Please ensure that you have a battery-operated radio on hand that is ready for use in this type of situation. So please learn the difference between a tornado warning and a tornado watch and the steps that you would need to take depending on what is the situation with a natural disaster. So similar along those same lines, there are also different classifications when there comes to there being a snow emergency. The sheriff of the county where you're working may declare a snow emergency and sometimes temporarily close county and township roads within their jurisdiction until conditions improve. So if there is a level 1 snow emergency classification, please drive with caution. What this indicates is that visibility may be limited due to blowing and drifting snow. The roads may also be icy. So please drive very cautiously during a level 1. Only those who feel it's necessary to be out on the roads during a level 2 snow emergency classification should be using extreme caution when they are out on the roads and driving. No one, however, should be driving during a level 3 snow emergency classification unless it is necessary to transport a client or a coworker or staff due to a personal emergency. Those traveling the roads during that time for a non-emergency could be subjecting themselves to arrest if it is not an emergency situation to be out on the road. And along those same lines, BPBS is not considered emergency personnel and therefore should not be traveling during a level 3 snow emergency. Okay, so some general tips to keep in mind to stay safe yourself and to keep your client safe during a weather emergency is to use good judgment. Please confirm locations of those within the home, within the facility, the office, or the day program where you're working. Please listen to the radio, turn on the TV if that is available, and take shelter when applicable. So please keep in mind that lightning and hail can be very dangerous. Even if there isn't a tornado, those conditions are also dangerous. Use your judgment as is dictated by those circumstances. If you're working with a curious individual, request that they remain indoors. If you're working within a home, a facility, or a day program, please be sure to keep track of the location of all of those individuals. If there's more than one employee present, one should remain with the individuals while the other employee collects emergency equipment and stays aware of the emergency information. Employees should be listening to the radio or TV for current weather information and updates. And please help everybody to be following all of those emergency instructions of weather warnings, such as seeking shelter. If instructed by radio, TV, or defense siren, you will be taking shelter in the designated location. Remember back to those graphics that we talked about earlier in the training. Please continue to monitor the radio or TV for further instructions and listen for the all clear before coming out of shelter. So let's talk specifically about tornadoes and how to remain as safe as possible during a tornado. Tornadoes are very dangerous. All watches and warnings need to be taken very seriously. The basement or storm cellars are the best place to take shelter if there is a tornado watch or warning. If there is no underground access available, you'll then want to identify an interior room or a hallway on the lowest floor of the building. Oftentimes that's a closet or a bathroom. As you're determining the best place to take shelter, you're going to want to put as many walls as possible between you and the outside of the building. Do not open windows, stay away from windows, stay away from doors, as well as those outside walls. That's the most dangerous place to be during a tornado. And please, seek shelter. If there is a tornado warning, get out of vehicles immediately, go to the lowest floor of the nearest sturdy building or a storm shelter if you happen to be out driving during a tornado. If you're caught outside and there is no shelter available, your best option is to lie flat in a nearby ditch or a depression in the ground and cover your head with your hands. Do not get under an overpass or a bridge. You're actually safest in a low flat section of the ground. Please watch out for flying debris, as this is what will be causing the most injuries and death during a tornado. All right, moving on to our next topic, which is loss of heat, power, or a utility failure. Management will assess any potential health and safety concerns regarding proper heating, cooling, sanitation, and determine if the location where you're working or where clients are living should be evacuated and if services should continue and be provided elsewhere. And let's go over some specific types of utility failures that you may encounter while you're on the job, starting with a gas leak. So how would you know if there was a gas leak? Natural gas leaks, excuse me, smell of rotten eggs. You may also become aware of a gas leak by hearing a hissing sound. If you smell gas, you will actually be using the same fire evacuation procedures for yourself as well as the individuals that you are supporting. Call 911 as gas leaks can be flammable and very harmful. Do not attempt to find the gas leak on your own. Allow the emergency personnel to take care of that and they will locate the leak. Windows should be open to help with ventilation. Do not use anything electrical, including even light switches and appliances if you suspect there is a gas leak. And especially do not use any open flames such as a lighter or even matches. If your vehicle is in close proximity of the leak, do not start your vehicle. That could also ignite a flame. Best option is to walk away to a safe destination with yourself and the individuals that you're serving. And lastly, do not re-enter the location until you're given the all clear by emergency personnel. Okay, another utility failure that you may encounter on the job is a boil water advisory. If a boil water advisory is issued, you will want to take the following steps that you see on the screen, such as boiling all water for drinking, water that you would use to make ice, even water that you use to wash dishes, brush your teeth, and water used for food preparation. Do not use water from the faucets until it has been boiled. The proper way to boil water for this type of use is to bring the water to a rolling boil for 1 minute, and then it should be cooled before using. Even water for pets should be boiled and then cooled for their use. And you also want to be sure to disinfect dishes by washing them in a dishwashing machine by taking that extra step to ensure safety. So loss of pressure in the water system and other issues underground could be what is causing drinking water to become contaminated. If a boil water advisory is issued in your area that you are working, employees should be taking these steps to ensure their safety as well as the safety of their clients. If the boil water advisory is lifted, please follow these following steps to ensure safety even after the boil water advisory is over. This is particularly important for people who have specific health concerns because their immunity may be compromised already to begin with. So you'll see there are the steps there on the screen. If you have a single lever faucet, you want to set it to run the cold water. Begin with the highest level faucet in the house and then open the other faucets one at a time, moving from your highest floor in the building to the lowest floor in the building. After 5 minutes, you'll turn off your faucets in the reverse order that they were turned on, going from the lowest floor to the highest floor. Additionally, you should also flush the refrigerator's water line, throw away any ice that was made in the freezer. The next 3 batches of ice should also be thrown out and not used. Ice maker containers should be wiped clean with a solution of 2 tablespoons of bleach to 1 gallon of water. Our next topic is general hazardous substance safety. All hazardous substances need to be properly labeled and stored separate from all food or non-hazardous products. Substances that can be identified as hazardous can include things such as medications, as well as household cleaning products. Never mix household chemicals. Deadly fumes can be created by doing so. For example, mixing bleach and ammonia could cause a dangerous reaction potentially deadly if breathed in. For this reason, please keep all chemicals and cleaning supplies in their original container, and they should be clearly marked as to what is in that container. Also, never boil cleaning supplies. If a chemical spill occurs, all individuals served should be moved away from that particular area. And please protect your eyes and skin as you clean it up. There's some additional notes up here on the screen, noting that hazardous chemicals are substances that could cause adverse health effects such as poisoning, breathing problems, skin rashes, and allergic reactions. Also noting that hazardous materials cannot be locked away in a residential program unless this is an approved restriction in the people that you serve's individual service plan. So please be sure that you're reading those individual service plans so that we are not violating any client rights. Even if you are taking all those precautions that we just talked about, sometimes contact with hazardous substances do occur, and if so, you would follow the steps that you see on the screen. First of all, be sure to call 911 immediately, follow any instructions given by the dispatcher, and please give first aid if instructed and if appropriate. If an individual has contact with a hazardous substance, however, EMS is not required, you will then immediately call poison control, and you'll see the phone number listed there on the screen. It is 800-222-1222. You may even want to pause the video now and put that number into your phone if you don't already have it in your list of contacts. Additionally, you will contact your supervisor and or the on-call supervisor immediately after contacting poison control and follow their directions as well, ensuring the health and safety of the individual. Lastly, you will document thoroughly in the client's chart what occurred. If this was an intentional contact with hazardous substances, please ensure the safety of the client and evaluate for a higher level of care if that is warranted. Okay, moving on to our next topic. If a bomb threat occurs, or if a fire setting threat is received, the person receiving the call must remain as calm as possible and have someone call 911, or they may call 911 as soon as possible, as well as contacting management. What you see on the screen is a list of things to take note of and then relay to the dispatch or relay to any police that may be involved in the situation. So as much as possible, please relay the message exactly as it was received to law enforcement. If you can, obtain the caller's phone number from the caller ID. Note the date and time of the call. If you can, try to note the description of the caller's voice. Was it raspy? Was it soft? Did they have an accent? Was there a stutter that you could note? What was their grasp of the English language, or were they speaking perhaps other languages that you could pick up on? What was their general manner? Were they very calm? Were they angry? Were they irrational? Could you hear anything in the background? Could you hear music? Could you hear sirens? Could you hear other people talking in the background? If the program or the area where you are is evacuated, no one is to re-enter the location without permission from emergency personnel, as well as permission from ViaQuest management. Okay, so moving on to situations where temporary shelter is required, but we are still continuing to provide essential services. Due to the special needs of the people that we serve, essential services must continue in a temporary shelter situation to maintain those individuals' health and safety in the event of a necessary evacuation, or if a location is not safe for all individuals or employees in the event, for example, of a fire or a bomb threat. Management will notify employees of the alternative location to provide services in. Management will work with employees to ensure essential services continue, and employees will document services and supports provided. Again, please take note of those graphic plans that will indicate where everyone is to meet and to take temporary shelter if it is unsafe. If you are unable to continue services in that designated area, Please reschedule and or make plans accordingly outside of the office. Please be sure any clients that may have appointments or may be coming into the office are rescheduled, or the session is relocated to a safer place. Okay, so thinking of office or home security and safety, these are just some general tips to keep things as safe as possible. All exit doors and windows must remain locked when employees and clients are not present. If alarm systems are in place, all employees must be trained on their location and how to use them. If a location does not have a designated person, VPBS employees will ensure to be near the waiting area around scheduled times to greet and get clients or visitors for scheduled visits. If your office does not have a designated front desk employee as well, VPBS employees will need to display an office sign, which is actually VPBS sign 12.21A. You can get that on Paycor, in an area easily visible to guests and clients and visitors on how to contact a designated employee to inform them that they have arrived at the office. When participants are brought in or taken to and from the day program by anyone other than VDES transportation, they must sign in and out of the participant log, and employees must notify their supervisor immediately of any unauthorized or hostile visitors at any work site or home. I know some of you are supporting clients out in the some of you are supporting clients out in the community. So we have some community safety tips for you here on this slide. Please always be aware of your surroundings. Only carry the minimal number of personal belongings needed to accomplish your job. Best practice is to wear your ViaQuest ID identification badge, especially when seeing clients in the community. Your cell phone should always be charged and accessible in case of an emergency. Like I mentioned earlier, please program your supervisor as well as the supervisor on call's phone number into your cell phone so you have that easily accessible. It's recommended to maintain your schedule in the electronic health record so your supervisor is aware of where you are in case of an emergency. Please review your client's attendance expectation guidelines with them so they are aware of what is the safety expectations during sessions. If concerns do arise with the client, please discuss those with your supervisor regarding if further sessions should take place. And if possible, remove yourself from unsafe environments and or contact 911 if concerns do arise. Okay, moving on to accidents or serious illnesses and what to do if those happen to occur. If you or your client are involved in an accident or become seriously ill, please call 911 and provide the needed emergency care following the CPR and first aid guideline training that you have received. Please remain with the injured person while ensuring the health and safety of other individuals or other employees that are present. Once the situation is stable, please contact your supervisor and or the on-call supervisor after hours for further directions. Employees who are injured while working are required to complete an injury reporting packet prior to the end of the day. Supervisor must be notified immediately in this type of situation. Employees will follow all directions of their supervisor and turn in that injury reporting packet to HR within 24 hours of the incident or as soon as possible. Incidents that involve clients will also be documented thoroughly in the client chart, notifying clients, guardians, and family members if applicable. The quality assurance specialist will be notified of the incident that caused the injury, and they will assist with any further reporting if that is required. Okay, what to do if you have a missing individual. If an individual is missing, contact your supervisor immediately. The supervisor or the supervisor on call will determine the appropriate time to contact the police if they are not already there due to the imminent health and safety risks of this type of situation. Once the supervisor has been notified, you'll begin a search by doing the following steps that are listed on this slide. First, check with other individuals served to see if they know where the missing individual is. Check the last known location of the individual. Check places the individual is known to frequent. Check the immediate neighborhood. Please complete an incident report, and management employees will be contacting family, guardian, and other relevant individuals. Okay, we have some tips here for coping with threats of violence. If a client becomes aggressive or threatening, it's important to respond in accordance with the policies and procedures that VPBS has in place. It's also important to have a knowledge of how to respond to challenging or angry, hostile individuals. Some general strategies for managing aggression would be stay calm, try to keep your emotions in check, try to adopt a passive and perhaps position your body at a 45-degree angle, avoid being head on with the person who is hostile. That could be seen as confrontational. Try to keep your hands by your sides with your palms empty, facing forward. Let the client air their feelings or their grievances while you validate their feelings and listen. Recommended to just ask open-ended questions to keep the dialogue going. Be flexible, try to accommodate within reason, and make sure other clients are not in harm's way. And as always, our last tip is to contact your supervisor immediately if able. So some continued tips. Sometimes our best efforts that we mentioned on the previous slide are not enough to de-escalate the situation. Incidents may escalate, or incidents involving weapons can also occur. So if there is a situation where there are threats of violence, we have some additional tips here for you. If a weapon is involved in a crisis incident, or if a threat involves actual, potential, or perceived weapons, there could be these could be some of the most important steps to keep in mind. Remain calm may be the last thought that you're thinking about in this type of a situation. However, this is what is going to keep you safe. You are then able to assess the situation if you are staying calm yourself. You're going to want to signal a coworker if possible for help, and or observe the area for a chance to escape. If you can, buy some time, try to stall. Time is going to be an asset if you can get time on your side. The longer you can talk to an aggressive individual, the less likely it is that the weapon will be used. Please follow the instructions from the person holding the weapon. Avoid reaching for the weapon. Attempting to disarm a person with a weapon can be extremely dangerous. You do not want to risk the harm to yourself or the harm to others. The police need to be notified during the encounter if you were able, or if a coworker was able to notify them. If you couldn't notify the police, you will want to notify the police immediately after the event. Notify your supervisor as well as notifying the supervisor on call after you have notified the police. Continuing on this topic, coping with threats of violence continues on this slide. Like I said, the police need to be notified during the encounter if you were able, or if the coworker was able. If you could not notify them during, you will not want to notify the police immediately after the event, and then notify your supervisor after you have notified the police. Some additional tips are here on the screen for you to remember what to do in this type of situation. In the event of a medical emergency, this could include situations such as a person is unable to get up from a fall, could be also a severe cut, an allergic reaction, also things like suicidal ideations, loss of consciousness, a stroke, a cardiac event, so on and so forth. If an individual served, as well as a coworker, is found unresponsive or needs medical attention, You, as an employee, will assess the situation and address it accordingly. Employees will initiate CPR unless otherwise dictated by a DNR order or a do not resuscitate order, or provide first aid services. If needed, you will call 911. If there are other individuals present, please remain aware of the impact that this could be having on those in the area and be sure to maintain their health and safety as well. Employees will notify their supervisor immediately. Management will contact the individual serves care team, family, guardian of the incident. And then lastly, be sure to complete the incident notification form and do the appropriate documentation as required for that client. Next topic is homicide awareness. We're going to start with the warning signs. When an individual is at risk of harming others, there oftentimes are certain red flags that merit attention. A single warning sign by itself usually does not warrant immediate action. However, further evaluation needs to take place. If additional warning signs are present, then more fact-finding, more assessment is needed to determine if there is the likelihood of danger. Up on the screen, you'll see some indicators, perhaps red flags that are associated with a significant risk of danger. So if your client is describing violent fantasies, if they're known to have a history or current anger management problems, if they're voicing a fascination with weapons, if they're boasting or practicing fighting techniques, if they are socially withdrawn, if they're expressing contempt for others, if they're non-compliant and have disciplinary problems, or if they're imitating, acting out murders or imitating murderers, those could all definitely be red flags that we want to investigate further to find out what's going on there. Continued on the next slide are even more warning signs here that the person you're supporting plays the role of the victim, the martyr, they have self-contempt. We're noticing strange, just unusual behaviors. The person is perhaps paranoid that people are out to get them or people are talking about them. We may notice violence, cruelty towards animals or cruelty towards weaker individuals, perhaps manipulation, preying on others, acting out. You may notice psychosis, other mental health symptoms related to dangerous behaviors. May notice flat affect or just an expressionless face. And we may be also picking up on unusual interest in the police, military, terrorist activities. They may be collecting those types of materials as well. Those would all be warning signs, perhaps of homicide. We would want to investigate further and see what was going on with that client. We also certainly want to be aware of any kind of suicidal ideations. So let's go through what to look for in those type of situations. Some individuals that we serve may have suicidal ideations, may even have a history of suicide attempts. All individuals who have a history or current thoughts of suicide, as well as a history of suicide attempts, need to have a safety plan. If an individual does not have a safety plan, please refer to your supervisor and follow their further instructions. All threats or discussions of suicide should never be taken lightly and must be dealt with immediately to protect that individual from harm. If you feel at any time there is an individual that is in crisis, you must act in accordance with their plan. It may save their life. On the screen here are some things to look for and to be mindful that a person could be having suicidal ideation. So you may hear things like discussion or threats of wanting to die. You may actually hear comments that they make, such as, things would be better without me, the world would be better off if I wasn't here, I'd be better off dead, if blank happens, I'll kill myself, so on and so forth. You may again notice the social withdrawal, isolation. You may see signs and symptoms of depression, crying, fatigue, sadness, helplessness, hopelessness, difficulty concentrating, not having interest in things that they formerly were interested in and found enjoyment in, constipation, weight loss. They may actually be making farewells to family and friends, saying goodbye, giving things away, putting their affairs in order, making a will, making arrangements with their finances, giving away their prized possessions, or just making suicidal messages, and then communicating death wishes are all to be taken very seriously, as these are suicidal ideation, um, things to be aware of. If you suspect that your client is homicidal or suicidal, ensure that the individual, as well as others' health and safety, is secure by keeping that homicidal or suicidal client in visual range to ensure that they do no harm. Secure the area by removing potentially harmful objects, get your client to a safe environment, and make it as difficult as possible for them to access those harmful objects. Things like knives, scissors, even things like shoelaces, neckties, cords, those would actually be considered harmful objects. If your client does not have a safety plan, you will need to create one with them. If they already have a safety plan, please review it with them. Encourage them to utilize the coping skills listed on their safety plan. Please also be sure to update the safety plan if it is not currently meeting their needs, or if the people listed as resources on their safety plan are no longer a good source of support. Let's update it and make it more relevant to their current needs. If warranted, contact the on-call crisis for additional support. If the client is homicidal, the clinician will need to perform a duty to warn on that individual that the client is having ideations about. Contact that person directly if applicable, or notify the police to make that notification on your behalf. Always notify your supervisor, write an incident report, document this in the progress note in detail, and turn this in to your direct supervisor. Okay, continuing on with homicide, suicide awareness. If an attempt is made, ensure clients and any victims are safe. That's our first order of business. Safety is always first. Contact 911 and ask for the crisis intervention team officer. Explain the mental health situation. Do not transport the individual to the emergency room on your own. Maintain contact, a one-on-one ratio with that client in a safe area until emergency personnel arrive to provide help. Complete the necessary documentation, including that incident report, documenting in the progress note what occurred, and be sure to include details of the incident. In the event of a client death, if an individual served or an employee is found unresponsive, we want to initiate CPR unless otherwise directed by a DNR or a do not resuscitate order. The employee will contact 911. Employees are not to touch or change anything at the scene, if at all possible. Employees must remain aware of the impact on other individuals in the area and maintain their health and safety as well. After contact with 911 has been made, immediately notify your supervisor as well as the supervisor on call and the incident hotline. Management will then contact the client's family, guardian, and others if that applies. You will create an incident report and complete the appropriate documentation, including closing the case by completing a discharge within the electronic health record. Okay, moving on to safety practice drills. So being aware of what to do in an emergency situation helps us to know and to stay calm in an actual event of an emergency, which is why ViaQuest has a strict guideline on how often to practice safety drills so that we are ready in the event of an emergency. During safety practice drills, we will know what to do in the event of fire, tornado, emergency lockdown, bomb threats. And it is important when we're having these drills to have employee and individual served participation. This is to ensure that everyone is prepared for these emergencies. Employees will receive site-specific information and training on how to complete these drills. All employees and individuals at these locations, whether that is home, office, day program, etc., during the time of the drill are required to participate fully. So if in the event an individual or employee refuses to participate, the supervisor and the team must be notified. The supervisor or the employee who conducts the drill will complete the required drill form, noting any concerns, and are required to report these concerns to their supervisor. And up on the screen, you will see such concerns that may need to be documented. Such refusals of an individual or an employee to participate in these safety drills, concerns about an individual or employee's ability to evacuate the location if there was actually an emergency, if the drill takes longer than is required for safety of the individual or employees in the event of an actual emergency, and really any other noted safety concerns that you become aware of should be included in this report. Excuse me. Okay, let's review emergency lockdown procedures. If an emergency occurs in the vicinity of the location or office where you work that could potentially threaten employees or the safety of the individual served, management may place the program under what we call lockdown. There are two types of emergency lockdown: an outside threat or a shelter in place. During either one of these, no one is permitted to leave the premises and no one is permitted to enter the location. The only exception would be law enforcement or other emergency personnel. With a lockdown for an outside threat, this event could be situations such as a potential intruder, an active shooter, or a threat outside of the location or office. While a lockdown for shelter in place, the event could be a hazardous material, a chemical incident outside of the location or office, so on and so forth. So here on the screen, I'll just review with you the emergency lockdown procedures for both of these, for the outside threat as well as for sheltering in place. So if you become aware of an outside threat, as staff, you will call 911 immediately. All individuals and employees are to be secured inside one room, inside the office or the location. Please check halls and restrooms for all individuals served. Close and lock exterior doors and windows. Move individuals and employees to a safe corner to reduce visibility. Turn off the light. Verify attendance. Remain in a position until the all clear is sounded by law enforcement. If there is a shelter in place called, there's a slightly different procedure. Individuals and employees outside of the building should not return to the location. You will close and lock the exterior doors and exits. Again, no one can enter or exit the building. Shut down air handling system or the HVAC system. Verify attendance and remain in position until the all clear is sounded by law enforcement and you are allowed to lift the shelter in place. Our next topic is about driver safety. Give you some statistics here. Auto accidents are one of the leading causes of death in the United States. You as an employee have an important responsibility in keeping yourself safe, as well as keeping our individuals served safe. If you are taking medication that could impair your judgment in driving, or if you are overtired, do not take a chance and do not drive. Do not speed. For every mile per hour over the speed limit that you drive, your chance of an accident increases by 2%. Avoid texting, avoid eating, do not use your cell phone while driving. If you do happen to have to make an emergency call, please pull over safely first before making that call. Wearing your seatbelt greatly increases your chance of surviving a car crash. Check your local radio and TV reports to confirm road conditions prior to transporting clients in bad weather. Following too closely behind another vehicle can be very dangerous, and that gives you actually less time to stop and could potentially lead to getting into an accident. You want to drive defensively, not aggressively. Defensive driving is based on the idea that accidents can be prevented. Identify hazards before they happen, such as weather conditions, road constructions, traffic congestion, knowing what areas have high pedestrian traffic. In bad weather, carry safety supplies in your car, such as jumper cables, a blanket, snacks, extra windshield wiper fluid, things such as that. Be aware that other cars around you are going to stop, and be prepared to stop and deal also with their sudden lane changes, swerving cars, etc. That all defines what defensive driving is. There's some other good tips here on the screen. Also want to be keeping your vehicle in safe and good working order. That's also a good safety tip. Okay, so hopefully today you took away these key points from this training. I'm just going to review real quick here. That in an emergency, always ensure the safety of both your coworkers as well as individuals served. Never hesitate to call 911. Even if you're unsure, call 911. Remain calm. If you panic, everyone panics. If there is a health or safety concern at your location, report this to your supervisors immediately. Safety is everyone's responsibility, and safety is number one. Employees are never permitted to speak with the media or give any statements to the media. Please stay aware of the weather and be prepared for any anticipated weather events. And lastly, know where safety equipment is located in your work location. So I appreciate your attention, and I hope that this training was helpful to you and will prevent any safety concerns in the future.